Let's play with colors. So I've got this Rowan McDonald poster design I did a while back. Obviously a good color theme going throughout the design already, but let's just play with it to see if we can make anything a little bit better, a little bit more interesting at the end. Photoshop has all of these different adjustment layers. If you go down to this icon in the bottom right, you've got all these options to basically tweak colors, contrast, different lights and darks, and really just any type of photo editing you might want to do to a final image. I think it's always fun to just play with adjustment layers at the very end of your design, in addition to maybe using them on your background layers and wherever you might have used them throughout the design as well. So let's start with color lookups. This is basically Photoshop having a preset list of photo filters you can choose from. So if you can just scroll through these and you can see the different effects they're giving to the image. A lot of these effects are pretty harsh, so you might just not want as harsh of an effect. You can always bring the opacity down for whatever filter you're on, but let's look at film stock 50. So like super bright and in your face. If we just wanted to highlight Rowan in this way, just highlight the player cutout, what we can do is invert this mask that automatically comes on the color lookup, holding Command and hitting I. That inverts it, and now with our white brush, we can brush back just a soft circle in the middle on Rowan, and maybe even that is a little bit too much brightness, so we can scale that down a little bit, maybe 50% opacity. So we've got the subtle kind of brightening effect going on there. The next thing we can do, let's go to gradient maps. For gradient maps, there's so many different presets. Basically, you can set the light tones to a certain color and the dark tones to another color, and really anything you want in between as well. So you can get really creative with creating your own gradient maps. If we wanted like kind of a brighter, warming look to this image, we can play around with the oranges and yellows. I'm gonna go to, let's go to iridescent, this preset folder. Let's just pick one of like the yellowy ones. So maybe that one, or yeah, I like this one. So we'll hit OK on that. Again, kind of a ridiculously strong effect. So let's tone this way down with the opacity to like 10%. And now you can see if we group these together, just a quick before and after for our progress so far, just kind of gives it like a bit more faded, a bit more washed yellow look to it. Maybe we don't like that washed look, and this is again just going to be dependent on whatever you're feeling in the moment, whatever you want to do to your graphics, but we can create a bit more contrast, bring in a curves layer. We can bring the dark tones down by clicking on the curves and dragging this downward, and all of a sudden we're getting like a lot more vibrant of an image, less flat, a lot more dynamic. And you can play with these as well if we wanted a bit brighter, but I kind of like getting to see some of this background texture by bringing all of this down a little bit. So again, before and after, just with those three adjustments, we've gone from this to this. Maybe this is cooler, maybe you like the first one better. Another thing we can look at is just the overall hue and saturation of the image, and specifically with certain colors. So if you go down to your adjustments, hue and saturation, let's say we want to match this red in his jersey to like what the DC Breeze actual red is. I can make a new layer, and I've got these swatches. So I've got the DC red right here. We can just fill a square with red, and that jersey color is just a little bit more faded, a little bit more orange right now. So what we can do is with our hue and saturation, go to the reds, and let's just mess with the hue of the reds by bringing the slider, basically we're gonna want it a little bit more to the left here. And we'll make it a little bit more saturated too. We're just trying to match this tone to the DC Breeze red. So like that's pretty close. Delete this square, and you can see the subtle hue and saturation, just making the red a little bit more accurate to what that team color is. When you're working through your designs, if you're using a lot of adjustment layers throughout and using different filters and textures, the colors might get lost, they might get a little bit more faded. So it's never a bad idea just at the end of your design, if it's a team graphic in particular, to kind of readjust the colors to line them up to what the color actually is. So that's all we're going to look at today. You can see again a before and after, and I always like to group all my effects into the same folder so you can quickly see what it's doing, but this is how our poster looked before, And then after, we have a lot more vibrant of a feel. Again, don't know which is better, but just different things you can do to experiment on your graphics whenever you finish a design.